I've heard it so many times. People hear a particular guitarist and they immediately identify with that player's sound as being emotional or polished, or they might say something like, that player is such a pro. And they can hear another player and they feel nothing, or they might comment on how that playing sounds cold or mechanical. I'm willing to bet more often than not, in each case, it's because of a player's phrasing, how the player plays their notes, all the little nuances that they add or they don't add, as the case may be. Phrasing is the process of adding some creative element like slides, bends, vibratos, or combination of those things to a note or succession of notes that you play in order to give the notes more life. Much like a singer adds nuances to the notes that they sing to convey meaning and emotion. Phrasing is immensely important in conveying emotions in your playing and getting the listener to feel what you're trying to express. Can you imagine having a conversation with someone, how boring it would be if they spoke in a monotone voice, if they never used punctuation of any kind, their voice never rising or falling or stopping to convey any kind of meaning? Well, that's what it's like listening to a guitar player with poor phrasing. The great thing about practicing phrasing is that you don't have to learn any new scales, arpeggios, or patterns to do it. That doesn't mean, however, that you've got nothing to learn or that phrasing is easy. Quite the contrary. Phrasing is tough. There are physical skills that you have to learn to make your phrasing convincing, but there's also the mental aspect, and that might be even more difficult because playing with good phrasing requires you to stay present mentally with each note and phrase. As you go forward in your guitar playing and you acquire more physical skills, you'll find it becomes very easy to revert to autopilot and to play scales, arpeggios, or patterns that you already know very well. All too often when this happens, our phrasing is neglected. We've all heard criticisms of guitarists that play too many notes or they sound mechanical. And while that criticism is not always valid, because sometimes the person who is doing the critiquing is musically ignorant about what that player is trying to accomplish, it's very noticeable when a guitarist has poor phrasing, and it's the thing that separates players at every level. Good phrasing makes a player sound more accomplished and professional no matter how many notes they're playing. Poor phrasing makes a player sound amateurish by comparison, even if they know how to play every scale under the sun. One of the first things you can do to make your licks sound more accomplished and polished is to add elements of phrasing or ornamentations at select times in your playing. For this lesson, I'm going to give you 8 examples of techniques you can apply to a note at the end of a phrase to make that note really stand out. Here's a practice tip. Start off playing just one note and apply an ornamentation to it. Once you're executing that technique smoothly, add a note in front of the one you're playing. Follow that process and stop when you're playing a 4 to 5 note phrase, because we're going to be adding a lot more stuff to those notes. Let's dig in. For the examples in this video, we're going to be playing a 5-note phrase in the key of G major, and it's moving right up the G major pentatonic scale at the 12th fret, or if you think of it this way, you could say the E minor pentatonic scale, first position at the 12th fret. We're playing a D note, an E note, a G note, an A note. We're going to stop on a B note, and that's where we're going to be adding our ornamentations. The first ornamentation we're going to get into is delayed vibrato. One of the most important things that guitarists can do to improve their phrasing is to improve their vibrato. And one of the most important ways that you can go about improving your vibrato is to learn how to delay it. A lot of guitarists seem to have no idea where to apply vibrato to make it most effective, so they sort of stick it all over the place. And a lot of times it sounds very fast and nervous, and thin and weak, and not at all vocal. Singers, if you listen to great singers, they don't apply vibrato to every note, and they don't apply it immediately when they hit that note. You want to learn how to apply the vibrato slowly, to build it up to the speed and the intensity that you want. It's an amazing way to make your guitar playing sound more like a human voice. Here is an example in a musical context. Now remember that delayed vibrato because we're going to be using it in conjunction with every other ornament that we discuss. Now the second technique we're going to get into is what we're going to simply call sliding into the final note. When we play, we could be very precise with how we strike the notes. But again, that sounds very robotic, very mechanical, and not very attractive. So we're going to add the nuance to the last note of sliding into it. Now we can do an ascending slide, or we can do a descending slide. Ascending slide would sound like this. I slid into the B note at the 12th fret from the A note at the 10th fret. We could do a descending slide. I slid into that B note from the C note at the 13th fret. You can do either one. That's your decision-making process as an artist. It's what you hear, it's what you're trying to convey, and that's what makes playing guitar so darn much fun. Here is our sliding into the final note along with the backing track. Technique number 3 is going to be sliding from the final pitch of the phrase to another note and then back to that ultimate pitch. So in the case of our phrase, we're stopping on a B note. Two different things. You can again do the ascending or descending slide. I'm going to descend to the A note and slide back. I could play it another way. I could play to my B note, slide to the C note at the 13th fret, and then back to my B note. Again, your choice as the guitarist. Here is that technique along with our backing track. I really love that particular technique. To me, it's starting to sound like what you might hear from a great slide guitar player. Technique number 4, we're going to bend up into our final pitch. So our phrase, we're playing D, E, G, A. A, we've got a whole step to get up to our B, so we're going to bend up to that B note, wait, and then add a little bent note delayed vibrato. Now, you can articulate this in a couple of different ways. You could actually pick the A note and then bend up, which has kind of a punchy sound. You could not pick the A note and bend up, and it's got a little smoother, little more drawn out, slinky kind of a sound. That's, again, up to you as a player. Here it is along with our backing track in that musical context. Ornamentation number 5, we're going to be combining a downward slide with a bend back up into our target note. This is an awesome sounding technique, combining a slide and a bend. We're going to start on the pitch we wish to end up on, which is our B note. We're going to very quickly slide downward to a lower pitch. In this case, it's going to be the A note. And then we're going to bend back up into our target note. There's a couple of different ways you could articulate this. If you want to articulate each note very plainly, you take a little more time bending up from the A note to the B note. If you want to make it sound a little more like slide guitar, you want to bend immediately up from that A note into the B, so it almost sounds like you're playing unison notes. All right? And again, that's a little more like a faux slide technique. You start to combine it with some other notes. You can get pretty close to that slide sound that we hear guys like Derek Trucks use that sounds so amazing. Here it is along with our backing track. Technique number 6 is the PreBend. This technique is done by starting on a note below the one we want to end our phrase on, and by bending up to that final note before we pick it. This technique takes practice to get the feel of bending up to the proper pitch, and you really got to concentrate and hear that note in your mind. The first player I heard do this was Eric Johnson, and it's kind of a neat articulation because you can get the sound of a bent note vibrato without that cliched bending up into a note. It's also a cool gateway technique because it leads to things like some of the combined techniques that we're going to use, and it's also critical if you want to learn how to get the faux sound. If you are a fan of somebody like a Derek Trucks, you can approximate some of his licks using pre-bends, kind of like this. Here is the pre-bend technique along with our backing track in our musical example. These last couple of techniques I really love. They're starting to get more and more musical and more vocal-like. Technique number 7, we're going to combine a pre-bend. We're going to release that pre-bend and then use an upward slide to get to our final pitch. So in our phrase, our final pitch has been the B note. So we're going to pause on the A note. We're going to pre-bend up to that B note. We're going to release it and then slide up into that B note and add our vibrato like this. Super cool. Now, one of the things that we can do here, we can vary the speeds of our bends and slides. We could do it slowly and draw it out. Which has a cool thing going on. Or if we want to get more of that faux slide, 2 notes on unison strings type sound, we could speed it up a little bit. And make that pre-bend and slide almost immediate. Up to you as the player. There's no wrong way to do it. It's going to fit what you're trying to express. Here it is in our musical example. Check it out. Our last technique, technique number 8, we're going to call the overbend, release, and rebend. This technique is a killer. It's been used to great effect by many blues musicians. Albert King comes to mind. Cream era, Eric Clapton comes to mind. It's been used notably in the rock genre by David Gilmour. And the idea behind it is we're going to start on a pitch below the pitch we want to end the phrase on. We've been ending the phrase on a B note, so we're going to start on the A note. We're going to bend that A note past the B note to the C note. We're going to release that bend, and then we're going to rebend back to that B note. It sounds like this. Now you can vary the speed of it, you can draw it out, you can milk it for all it's worth, or you can do it a little faster. Again, it's got a very slidey sound, a very vocal-like sound. Once you get this technique under your fingers, you're going to realize how many times you've heard great soul singers, R&B singers, rock singers, jazz singers use this kind of phrasing. Check it out in time with our musical example. Those are our 8 examples. Work hard on your phrasing. It really is the secret sauce, so to speak, that separates players at any skill level. You don't have to play millions of notes to sound incredible and to get people's attention and to really add to the music you're playing. Thank you so much for checking out the video. Thank you so much for coming to my channel. Please like the video, subscribe to our channel. There's going to be lots and lots of great content coming. I can't wait to see you again soon. Thanks. Bye-bye.